In this section, we will be looking at terms that go with business and economics that we'll be using throughout the course. And then we'll look further at the idea of how these terms integrate into mathematical equations called models that help us to predict and describe what's happening in various business and economic situations. Please don't feel like you need to memorize these terms or the definitions to be able to repeat verbatim, but rather I want you to know how to use them and what they mean. A list is provided for your reference, but there's two in particular I want to look at first. One of those is interest. There are two types of interest that we're going to be concerned about during this course. One is simple interest, defined here, and the other is compound interest. Interest is the amount of money you earn or owe for money that you either invest or borrow. In simple interest, you only earn or pay interest on the principal, represented here by P, or the initial amount. With compound interest, you earn or owe interest on the principal plus the interest on the amount of interest you earn from the previous compounding period. More will be explained as we look at the formulas. Here are the two formulas for simple and compound interest. Let's consider two scenarios. Imagine that you have $1,000 invested for 2 years. At a rate of 8%. If we calculate this by simple interest, that means that we only get 8% interest on the principal itself. So the interest is going to be the principal of $1,000 times the interest rate, which is calculated in decimal form. So 0.8 times the time in years, which is 2. If we calculate this, we get a value of $160, or we get a total amount at the end of 2 years as $1,160. In contrast, if we use compound interest, that means that at the end of the first year, the new interest is calculated based on the new amount that is invested. So here, that amount is going to be, the principal is the same of $1,000, but we're going to do 1 plus 0.08 raised to the 2 power. When we calculate this, we actually end up with $1,166.40. Notice that slight increase is a result of the concept of compounding interest. Below is a list of other terms that you need to be aware of and how to use them, because while the interest models are fairly straightforward, notice that most models are not going to be quite as instantly useful. Perhaps we need something to predict the stock market, and it has to take into account other factors. Take, for example, the pandemic. When it hit, many things affected the rate at which the stock market grew or declined. Below, looking at these terms, we see things such as we're going to be able to calculate cost. We're going to look at fixed costs, which are those things that don't change. Variable costs, the things that depend based on the number of items that you create or sell. Revenue, the income, depends on how much you sell. Price, the price that you're going to sell an item for. Profit, what we're going to call the break-even point. Your supply and demand functions. And notice here, this is the price at which producers will supply X items, and then the price at which consumers will buy it. If I'm not going to make enough money, I certainly don't want to make the product, but as a consumer, I'm not going to pay for the product if it costs too much. And then we'll also move into equilibrium points as well as revenue.